One day in a city in Japan, a giant monster appeared. People began to panic with the appearance of the giant monster. Suddenly a woman appeared who would stop the monster. She was the pretty guardian, Aika. With her confident smile, she would defeat the monster. The monster was confused because it was the first time he saw Aika. The monster was even more confused because she suddenly said, "Let's pretend that never happened." It turned out that Aika thought that acting the part might get her in the mood, but that isn't working. Come to think of it, if it weren't for the monsters, she would not have to do the stupid act at all. So, all her frustration, she is gonna take it out on the monster. Fighting for justice while smiling is difficult. He is the opposite of All Might who fights monsters with a smile. Welcome to this channel. I hope you guys doing well. In this video, we will recap one-shot manga. This manga is a comedy action genre. A little synopsis of this manga is a hero who is stressed with his job as a hero, while people consider him a cool hero. But in reality, not so. Curious about the manga? Let's watch it until the end. Don't forget to subscribe. One day, in the same city in Japan, there was a little girl who was admiring her gym clothes bag which had a picture of pretty guardian Capipuri. The little girl's name was Mai. She really idolized Capipuri until her friend said that during school she kept showing off her new bag. Until her friend said that they were already in 4th grade and still idolized something like that. Mai got angry and attacked her friend with her new bag. Mai really idolized pretty guardian Capipuri. For her, pretty guardians are the perfect role models. They parted ways. On the way, Mai accidentally saw the news which reported about several years ago, mysterious monsters began attacking people. They investigate the mysterious figure who fights those creatures. According to numerous witness reports, like something straight out of a Sunday morning girls anime. That person appears dressed as a pretty guardian. Mai didn't believe that pretty guardians were real. She wanted to meet a real-life pretty guardian. Not long after that, an explosion occurred not far from where Mai was. People started to panic because the explosion was the appearance of a monster. Hearing the appearance of a monster, Mai, who should have been protecting herself, instead headed to the monster's location. She hoped she could meet a real-life pretty guardian. When Mai arrived at the location of the monster, she found the pretty guardian beating the monster mercilessly. Funnily enough, she thought that the pretty guardian was bullying the monster. She thought pretty guardians were supposed to be sparkly and cute. But this pretty guardian is all messy and scary. After beating the monster, Mai saw a baby monster crying because its mother had been killed by the pretty guardian. Mai felt sorry for the baby monster and wanted to help it. But the pretty guardian showed no mercy to the baby monster. Before killing the baby monster, Mai stopped her. She told the pretty guardian to stop bullying the monster. The two of them argued. Firmly, Mai stopped the pretty guardian from killing the baby monster. The baby monster ran away into the sewers. With that, the pretty guardians changed their minds and left, but Mai stopped them. She wanted to make sure if she was the real pretty guardian. Annoyed, the pretty guardian replied that she was the real one. Mai was shocked to hear that. But Mai still doesn't believe that she is the real one because according to Mai, the pretty guardian she knows should be sparkly and pure. The pretty guardian doesn't have time to entertain Mai, she is on a mission to hunt monsters. And the pretty guardian also has to sneak out of her part-time job. Not long after that, Aika was fired from her part-time job. She was fired because she had sneaked out of her workplace several times. Mai, who did not give up to make sure if the pretty guardian she knew was a different person. She even followed her. Mai was surprised by the real face of the pretty guardian, she was very different when she transformed. Not long after that, Aika was alone in the park while smoking. She thought about looking for a new part-time job. Mai, who had been following her, suddenly showed herself and shouted that pretty guardians shouldn't smoke. Aika was surprised by Mai's sudden appearance. Mai followed her because she still can't believe she is really a pretty guardian. And pretty guardians are supposed to eat lollipops. Aika told her the truth that being a pretty guardian is stressful, that's why she smokes. Not only that, suddenly a rabbit appeared. The pretty guardian Mai knew should be a rabbit, a fairy. The rabbit told Mai that being a magical girl it's a really tough job with a lot of pressure. Mai said that it's a hard job, why don't you just quit? Pushing yourself too hard isn't good, right? But he can't stop being pretty guardian. Once she receives the power of pretty guardian, she can't give it up or pass it on to someone else, it's a special power. The fairies are beings born from human imagination. If the number of humans decreases, so does the number of fairies. That's why the fairies combined all their power to create magical girls. Aika, who had been putting on makeup while listening to the fairy tell her story, while Mai, who was still little, was confused hearing the fairy's explanation. Mai also realized that she had been putting on makeup. Well, she has an important business. It's a death metal band, Sakai Kill's last live concert. Again, she did it to release all her pent-up stress. Mai, who still held on to her position, said that pretty guardians don't listen to death metal. Pretty guardians listen to J-pop. Well, J-pop ain't gonna help her blow off steam. They started arguing again just because of their taste in music. Aika, who couldn't stand Mai's idealism anymore, told her that Mai had been forcing her ideals on her this whole time. Having ideals isn't necessarily a bad thing. But still, she needs to face reality too. They stared at each other. Suddenly, Mai punched Aika in the face because of her makeup, and it scared Mai. She'd always loved the beautiful, sparkling pretty guardians with all her heart. But now, Aika is nothing like a real pretty girl should be. Mai hates her. That's what Mai felt about the original pretty guardian. Mai went home feeling sad. How could someone like that be a pretty guardian? She'll never accept it. Suddenly, the baby monster appeared in front of Mai. He asked Mai for help because he was hungry. Mai helped him and gave him milk to drink. After drinking the milk, the baby monster was no longer a baby, but a giant monster. The milk given by Mai made the monster grow big. Mai was scared and tried to run. But the monster caught her. Mai tried to wake up the monster by calling her name, which Mai herself gave her. But unfortunately, the monster didn't like the name Mai gave her. Mai looked for help, but people feared the monster. Mai's favorite bag with a picture of the pretty guardian Kapikuri, she thought that the bag would help her. She threw it to the monster. Well, the monster chewed the bag and threw it away. Mai began to realize it was just a fantasy, it couldn't work in the real world. Mai remembered the incident where Aika wanted to kill the baby monster, but Mai stopped her. She thought that all of that was her fault, because she only saw what she wanted to see. That's why she said those things to her, she said such mean things. She is at an important concert right now. Mai needs to face reality, she won't want to save someone who said such mean things to her. Mai thought that she would die because that was the reality. But even so, he was very scared. Poor little girl. He shouted while asking the pretty guardian for help. Pretty guardian came to help Mai. With her death metal makeup still on, she punched the monster with full force. Mai fell. Before her body reached the ground, pretty guardian saved her. Before she could thank her, pretty guardian threw her. The reason was because the monster attacked her, and pretty guardian blocked the attack. Pretty guardian was thrown very far. The monster thought that she had lost. Mai also thought that pretty guardian had been defeated. But the fairy said that Aika would help no matter what. Mai said, why did she go that far? It was because she was pretty guardian. Being a pretty guardian is incredibly stressful. That's why they searched for someone with the mental strength to handle it and used fairy magic to make them a guardian. That someone is Aika. After becoming a pretty guardian, Aika sacrificed much of her personal life fighting monsters. And the stress kept building up. Until finally, she reached her breaking point. Aika had given up being pretty guardian. To protect humanity and the fairy had to force her to continue being a pretty guardian. That was his duty. But he couldn't say anything. He has been watching Aika up close all the time. It's not Aika's fault. All they could was create a pretty guardian and force everything onto a single young girl. But Aika, she tried to put her own life first. That was what she wanted, but her mind kept racing. Someone somewhere is being attacked by monsters right now. Maybe I'm the only one who can save them. Those thoughts kept spinning in her head, until she couldn't even lose herself in her favorite music anymore. Even when she tried to put her own life first, the stress kept pulling up. So, if she'll be stressed either way, then she chooses to be a pretty guardian. That's why Aika helps people. Hearing the fairy story, Mai couldn't believe it. She had no idea that being a pretty guardian could be so much stress. And yet, she said something mean to Aika. Mai gave her support to the pretty guardian. Hearing Mai's support, Aika was happy. The pretty guardian got up and was going to defeat the monster. With her ultimate move, Stress Explosion, the pretty guardian defeated the monster. Mai was amazed to see the real pretty guardian defeat the monster. After defeating the monster, Mai apologized to Aika for saying mean things to her. Aika also apologized for not being the pretty guardian that Mai wanted. Maybe Aika didn't sparkle and shine and not exactly cute, but Aika was super duper cool. That's what makes her an awesome pretty guardian. Mai thanked her for saving her. Sometime later in the park. That was the first time Aika got a thank you. She thought, since becoming a pretty guardian it was nothing but stress. But being thanked ain't half bad. The fairy was happy to hear that. Even if it's stressful, keep fighting for justice. The end.